Army ranks tell a simple story. Hey, I am Chuck the bureaucrat, and there is an easy way to explain the Army ranks to, friends and family who may not know how this crazy system works. And the key is the way that a particular rank insignia, it kind of represents an object or the number of people that a soldier is responsible for. We'll get started with the enlisted ranks, and we'll work our way all the way up from the bottom, then through the officers, and in the end, what I'll do is I'll bring the warrant officers into this story. All right, enlisted. If you go all the way down to the bottom of the ranks, you got Private E1, and they're not responsible for anybody, so they don't even really have a rank. Next up, you got Private E2. And they're responsible for themselves and maybe the guy in their tent, so their insignia looks like a little tent. Then you got Private First Class, and E3 is responsible for himself, the guy in his tent, and maybe the area around his tent, so he gets a little rocker. By the time you get to Corporal, they're responsible for a couple tents worth of people, so their insignia looks like two little tents. You make sergeant, and you're in charge of a row of tents. And now it gets really easy because a staff sergeant is just in charge of a row of tents and the area around that. And then a sergeant first class is responsible for a row of tents and an area that's even twice as big. Master sergeant, well, you see where we're going. It's a row of tents and the area around and around and around. Until finally, you get all the way up to sergeant majors who, they like to be called sergeants major, which I can never make my brain say right. Well, they have the same insignia as the master sergeant, except they get this little device inside their rank. The best way to understand the difference is just that, the fancier the doodad, the more important the dude. All right. So that was enlisted, and now let's do officers, and their insignia is going to follow the same pattern where it kind of represents how many people they're responsible for, with one special caveat. Sometimes you'll see officers of different ranks that have the same insignia shape, but the color's different. Sometimes it's silver, and sometimes it's gold. The rule is that silver is senior. It's kind of like an old dude going gray. Silver is harder and often a bit tarnished by use. On the other hand, gold is junior, kind of soft and malleable and always bright and shiny. Anyways, that rule is going to matter right off the bat with lieutenants because a lieutenant is responsible for about as many people fit in a barracks, so their rank looks like a barrack. The color rule comes in here where a second lieutenant's rank is gold because they're junior, and a first lieutenant's rank is silver because, they're senior. Oh, and if you were ever in high school orchestra, an easy way to remember that first lieutenants are senior is that it kind of works like first chair. Then you got captains. They're responsible for as many people as fit in two barracks and the area between them. Once you get to major and lieutenant colonel, they're responsible for as many soldiers as you can see from the top of an oak tree. So they get that little oak leaf. Then you apply that silver and gold rule. So the major is a gold oak leaf and the lieutenant colonel is a silver oak leaf. If you make it to colonel, you're responsible for as many soldiers as an eagle can see as it flies through the sky. Next, a one-star general is responsible for as many soldiers as a star can see. Then, of course, you got 2-star, 3-star, 4-star, just more and more. It's kind of like those sergeants with more and more area around their little tents. Ultimately, you get up to a rank that, we don't even use anymore, the 5-star general. And you'll notice that the stars make a circle all the way around the world, so they're responsible for all the soldiers. All right, so that wraps up the enlisted and the officers, and you can see how it's easy to remember the relative difference between their ranks based on like how many people their rank is responsible for. But now let's take a look at the warrant officers, because there's a little trick that follows this theme about what they're responsible for. It's just slightly different. You get started out, you have Warrant Officer 1, and they have just one little square pip in an insignia that looks like a building. That pip means that they're responsible for a bay. I don't know, maybe it's a maintenance bay, maybe it's a supply bay, but they're only responsible for one. They make CW2, and they're responsible for 2 bays. And then 3 and at 4 pips, they're responsible for all the bays in the entire building. And then, if they stick around to make CW5, which, by the way, is the rank that every single soldier should aspire to, well, if they stick around to CW5, they get a line to represent that they're responsible for all the bays. Now, is this going to help you get your job done? Probably not. I mean, you probably already knew all of this, and you think I'm just being silly. In fact, you probably detected some problems with some of the things I said, and you think I'm being an idiot. But there is a particular situation where this little story comes in handy, and that is when you're dealing with families, like promotions or graduations. I mean, Cousin Billy comes along to whatever the event is, and he doesn't know anything about all these people in green suits running around and yelling orders at everybody. But you teach him this simple, silly little story, and all of a sudden the army starts to seem a lot less confusing and intimidating. In fact, you'll hear people say that the military is essentially a family business, and I argue that that's because people who grew up around the military find it a lot less mysterious and frightening. If you want to see more about what I mean, watch this video.